welcome to another episode of Between the Studs. Today we are joined by Daniel, who you've seen multiple times. I mean, if you haven't...
No stranger around
these
parts.
If you watched Between the Studs at all before, you'll see both of us talking about old, weird Lego stuff.
This is a weird one. This is a weird one, Mark. I was worried. We did Lego Island for the last one. This is another real...
So, we love deep dives here at Between the Studs, but this is probably the deepest dive
deep
of the
dive.
world.
Pun intended. Good one, Mark.
Love it. I got it.
Good.
Nailed it.
Good.
All right. So,
This is real bottom of the iceberg stuff. That's how I always call it.
Yeah, exactly.
You see those iceberg charts that are like things everybody knows about, things some people know about, things that hardly anybody knows about.
Yeah, the very deep, dark, secret niche things.
The abyss.
And this is it. So this is SEA-TRON and Sea People.
Yep.
So SEA-TRON is the overarching theme, though, right? It's a sub-theme of space that never existed.
That's true.
And yet we have it all displayed beautifully on the table in front of us.
To the casual observer, this might just look like a collection of old sets from the 90s.
Exactly.
And that's what it's going for.
So to the trained Lego eye, though, this should really blow people's minds, especially at like conventions and stuff where this has been displayed.
The reactions at Brick Fair, Virginia last year were great. I mean, you'd see people just kind of, doing the slow walk around the table and then... What?
Yeah.
What? Huh? Who?
Exactly. So, Daniel, explain to us what exactly SEA-TRON is to those who don't really know about it, and then, what's the history behind the theme that never existed?
Yeah, so SEA-TRON was a planned theme in development. The dates are kind of fuzzy, late 80s, early 90s. The targeted release was probably around like 1990 or 1991. Mm-hmm. So this predates all of AquaZone.
Wow. So
this is what kind of, you can even see it in the color scheme that this, the yellow and trans blue is AquaZone, and the green and black was kind of Aqua Raiders 1.
Exactly.
Which there were only 3 sets of that made. Mm-hmm. That was a very limited one. But where most of this information comes from is from one Brick Journal article, which was an interview with Jens Nygaard Knudsen. I hope I'm pronouncing that.
That sounds about as close as it gets.
Anyway, it was Brick Journal Article 6, so really early and now kind of a common staple of Lego media. But it was advertised as spaceships on a water planet, which is a little bit convoluted. I'll give you that. The logo kind of shows it. It's showing the kind of dome above the sea that's the white with the trans red canopy, which is supposed to represent everything above the water level, and then the yellow and blue, which is supposed to represent everything kind of below the water level that you see here on this monorail. So the monorail would actually go down some of the ramp pieces and be like underwater, and then be above water to load in their cargo into these spaceships, I guess, to ferry it off.
Looking at some of the pictures that we do have of the prototype sets, I did see that the monorail seemed to change color, is that right?
Yeah, the track actually switches to blue halfway
through. It's like a gradient, right?
Right, which, I think I'm going to do a separate video on how I made a lot of these, non-production parts or parts that never existed in these colors. And there are some that you don't mess with. You wouldn't paint monorail track. You would be kicked out of any convention or Lego circle or club that you're a part of.
You'd have to be extremely wealthy to get away with that.
Well, yeah, wealthy, but also I think people might burn you at the stake for committing such treason.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so lots of really cool, interesting things that they were trying to convey that theme, but it's a little hard to convey without, describing that's what's going on. But it's a really fantastic theme that, and then, there's this Sea People thing. So there were these kind of 2 opposing factions, it seems, between the space people and the underwater people.
And this was the earliest prototyped Lego Alien minifigure characters, right?
So we're talking early 90s. The minifigures for the aliens were wild. They were completely molded. It was the head, the torso, and both legs.
Like
were
feet.
New molded pieces. Yeah, like webbed feet and kind of these scaly looking parts. And this is like 10 years before we even saw like Yoda and Jar Jar Binks with Star Wars, which are the actual first minifigs with special molded pieces.
And this is kind of like around the same time of Lego skeletons being thrown around as prototypes as well, isn't that right?
That's true. Yeah. And one of the reasons that this project got canned was just due to the cost, and also the quote is people just weren't ready for aliens.
Which seems
Whatever
very,
that means.
very
I don't
iconic
know.
and cliche at the same time. It's great.
It's the 90s. It's not like it was the 50s or 60s or something, and
Yeah.
people were like spooked by that kind of stuff. So, yeah, kind of odd. But
Lego playing it very, very, very safe, I guess. So
most people chalk up the reason that this did not come out to the high price threshold and cost that went into making monorails.
yeah, there's a lot of molds happening too. I see prototype creatures, prototype dome piece.
Yeah.
All the alien minifigures, it would be hard to produce in different colors mold. Yeah, there's a lot of work.
It would be a lot
entailed,
of custom molding.
yeah.
I mean, you look at the previous monorail. So Futuron monorail came out in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
That was $155 in 1990, which equates to like $344 now.
Not everyone's going to be able to buy that. Yeah.
The airport shuttle came out in 1990. That was $170, which in 1992 is like $376 today. And then the Unitron monorail from 94 was $178, which is like $362 today. So they were really expensive.
Yeah.
And they did not sell well at all.
Yeah.
So that's another major contributing factor to why this probably didn't
So
come out.
two of the backbones of this proposed theme were things that were really expensive to get off the ground. So
Yes.
monorail, the SEA-TRON theme seems to be based on this monorail. It's like the backbone.
That's the only set that we have any pictures
Yeah.
of from like that faction. Is this kind of space base with.
And then the underwater theme is relying on a very complex alien minifigure that didn't exist in Lego's portfolio yet.
Yeah.
And a few, probably some new colors and molds happening in some of the pre-existing pieces too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a lot of work to be done if this was to see the light of day. And I think it was just maybe a little too ambitious for its time. So,
Yeah, for sure. Another interesting thing about those minifigures, they were sculpted by Niels Milan Peterson, a famous sculptor who's been with Lego forever. He also sculpted the horse, the crocodile, the monkey, the skeleton,
The octopus.
like all of the like classic iconic Lego things. Were mostly sculpted by Niels Milan Peterson.
A lot of the pirate sail illustrations were done by
Yeah.
him. He did just so many.
Very talented guy. Very, very
If
talented.
you like classic Lego, you like his work.
Yes.
I
Oh,
gotta
yes.
tell you so.
It affects everything there ever was or has come since then,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. So, he was the right guy for the job, but unfortunately the cost, I think, was just too prohibitive.
Yeah, it just wasn't the right time. And what's interesting, looking at the stuff on the table, I see a lot of parallels.
Mm-hmm.
So, Aquazone happened a little bit after this. I think it was probably like a decade-ish,
Yeah, that kind of rose from the ashes of what SEA-TRON left behind.
This, if you told me this was an Aquazone mock, excluding the red and white, this really looks like an Aquazone monorail if you were to make one. So it's kind of like a precursor to that. And I think they probably just inherit, like, let's do it differently. Let's do it with crystals, underwater, submarines, and skip the monorail,
Yeah. And there are a handful of people out there who have done Aquazone mocks or, whole underwater seascapes with coral reefs and stuff. And they have built a monorail that looks very similar to this. It's
Not too
obviously
different.
A nice nod to SEA-TRON, but maybe has some like trans neon orange antennas or things that are a little more Aquazone-ish than say SEA-TRON.
Absolutely.
So a little Easter egg there for some people who are in the know.
Exactly. But yeah, so fascinating. It was just skirting the edges of reality, really, because it's so interesting.
On the brink of greatness.
Exactly. The
What
cusp
could have
of greatness.
been, yes.
And there are other prototype themes we might talk about in a little bit, but this is one of the ones that really stands out just because of the unique aliens in the monorail. And
it stood out to me because it was doable. There's a lot of other sets or unreleased themes and things that you couldn't make today. There's far too many specialized pieces. But I saw this and I was like, I can do this. There's a few things that I'll have to adapt and kind of get creative with, but I was like, I can do this.
This is close to reality. There's only a few things that you're actually using a different piece or just kind of substituting something that's close or painting a few things. We'll talk about that in a second a little bit. But it's really fascinating to see this very careful love letter to non-existent things. That's awesome.
Yeah, and they said in some of those interviews that there was all kinds of other planned stuff. They said they had other parts planned for monorail track.
Wow.
So I don't know, that could be like crossovers. I mean, we already did get switches, so I'm not sure what other things you could have for monorail track.
Yeah, maybe different types of engines or car options. I mean,
who knows? The possibilities are lost to time,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
Yep. But so talking about what's on the table here, which part would you like to start with and start describing the builds themselves here, Daniel?
Well, I guess let's go chronologically. So I built the monorail first. This actually started it's either late spring or early summer, because somebody came into the store one day, did a trade-in, and they had a bag full of monorail track and the motor and the 2 chassis.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it. It was all of the track for the Unitron monorail, because it's the one that came with the switches.
Yeah.
And had the, there was the part where it went up and the part where it went down, where it like dropped off the ramp, docking things. Yeah. So I had all of those track pieces and the motor and the chassis. And I saw it come in the door. And I was like, oh, I gotta get this. I gotta get this.
Right away.
I hope Steven doesn't hold a grudge, because he also really wanted it that day. But I beat him to the punch. And I knew it would be a great candidate for this, because you wouldn't want to buy a complete monorail and pull it apart, or buy just these pieces separately. You'd spend a fortune.
Yeah, no.
So it came in, I instantly snagged it. Joe was working that day and Chris wasn't here, so I actually wheeled and dealed with Joe to get this, and I don't think Chris ever knew it even came in the store. But we gave somebody some money for trade-in. I bought it immediately that same day. So all the store made money. I paid a lot more than we gave the person who traded it in. So the store made a lot of money off it being instantly flipped. We didn't have to clean it or process it or anything.
You just wanted it. Yeah.
I'm taking this out the door.
That's awesome.
So I took that and I started finding all the photos I could. The answer is there's only one. There's only one photo of this, and there's only one photo of all of this. And then there's a close-up of the alien minifigure.
Yeah.
That's it.
And reading on the Brick Journal article stills that we have on, you can actually find them on Flickr. This was actually from Niels' personal photo collection, right? That's where these came from. So.
If there's stuff in Lego archives, it's locked up so tight you'd never find it.
Yeah.
Unless you work there.
They probably don't even know it exists,
probably
right?
Not. Probably not. That stuff just gets wiped off the face of the earth. I mean, there are a few people that I've tried reaching out to see if they know any more or maybe have any additional pictures. Niels, I think, is still around. Jens Nygaard Knudsen, unfortunately, has passed away, so a lot of that stuff is probably unfortunately lost to time. But there's a few people I've tried reaching out to. We'll see if I hear anything back, but I wouldn't be surprised if not.
They've probably forgotten most of it at this point anyway, too, because this is very much a past thing. But so you started out with the monorail. That was the beginning of this long and enduring project.
Like I was saying, that was either late spring or early summer, because I got that and I was like, I decided to go all in on it because I wanted to finish it for Brick Fair, Virginia last year, which was in August. So it was probably early summer, because that was a mad dash to try and get this built and finish it in time for that. And I did it. I pulled it off. I made it happen.
It looked great.
The only thing I think I didn't get in time was these trans yellow 2x2 dishes.
Ah, yes.
Are a very uncommon part from some old classic space sets. And there was probably only 1 or 2 in whatever set they came from, so it was hard to find 4 of them, and I had to order them from Hungary or something.
Oh,
and that package didn't come in time, so I had some neon green ones instead. But I was able to finish it. It's real interesting just trying to track down these parts and find out where they came from. The yellow battery box was in a construction vehicle set.
Wow, I didn't think about the battery box, because they always come in gray and red and other things, but not.
Yeah, these kind of octagonal panel pieces here that are on the ship with those black stripes printed on them. There was only one in one classic space set. So finding 4 of them is very hard.
Yep.
There's a 1x2 brick here with the arrow facing down instead of sideways. Same thing. Only one in one classic space set. So, something that somebody who was putting this together in the design office didn't think of, because they probably had a bucket of them in front of them.
Yeah, they probably had handfuls.
Produced more.
Yeah.
But now they're almost impossible to find.
That's amazing.
So it was just a real treasure hunt of trying to find this stuff and track it down.
And you were telling me about the Futron red figures, so they're also rare as well, right?
In the original picture, they reused the red Futron guys, which are I believe the rarest color of the Futuron figs. They run at least $20 or $30 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So to get a handful of those was a pretty penny.
It's expensive investment there, but yeah.
It adds up quick.
And so one of the things that really is striking about this whole model is these big red canopies. Now, you want to tell me just briefly about these?
The biggest issue was those canopy pieces.
Because they don't exist in that color, right?
Right.
As far as real sets.
And I'll mention this more, I think, in another video where I talk about the techniques that I did for this stuff. But there's a couple methods you can use. You can either substitute it for another color that's close. Trans neon orange would really be the closest, but that kind of would throw off the whole color palette of the thing.
A little bit, yes.
One of the other things that I tried was there's this like dye, or it's actually called alcohol ink, which you can apply to it, and it's non-permanent. You can wash it off just using rubbing alcohol, and it comes off perfectly clean. You'd never know it was there. Yeah. So I didn't feel too bad about putting that on. That's what I've actually done on this smaller octagonal one on the front, because there's more nooks and crannies and studs and things to get it in. So that one's coated in kind of a dye. But the larger pieces, what I actually did was I bought an adhesive vinyl transparent film.
Wow.
And I applied it just like you would a screen protector on your phone or a Lego sticker. But the tricky part is you got to start with one face, and then you're wrapping it onto other faces around these corners. And then where the other corners kind of meet here, you would have excess material. So you actually have to trim out like a thin wedge shape to get it to marry up on the corners, right?
Yeah.
Also I forgot to say, so I obviously used these pieces in a different color. So I'm using the transparent yellow ones from BlackTron, which is the most expensive color of that piece. Those are like, those are like $40 or $50,
I was about to say,
$60 a piece.
They're at least in the 50 range, right?
Very expensive.
Yes.
I'm fortunate to work here where I at least have access to those things.
Most of the
Doesn't
time
mean I get a good deal on it, but I can at least use stored credit.
You really can't just pop onto Bricklink and buy a dozen of those. You know, it's like it just doesn't exist.
Fortunately, I only needed 2. But
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so I was very pleased with how that came out, because that was another thing that almost everybody who first approached my setup at Brick Fair, Virginia was like, how did you get those in red? How'd you get those in red? Those don't exist in red. Because I was like, they're not.
You think it's a prototype looking at it.
You can still see kind of on the edges where I didn't put the film. You can see the yellow showing through.
So I would have thought this was a paint or dye on this big yellow canopies, because, I mean, how else are you going to do it? No, you actually cut out each panel of that angle. That's amazing.
It is all one piece still. I wrapped it one face at a time.
But you just trimmed it.
To trim out little kind of triangular shaped pieces so that they would...
I see that now looking at it very closely, but I never would have guessed. And that's really... fantastic handiwork there, That's awesome.
It worked better than the dye or the
big
ink
surface
on a larger surface like that, because the ink will kind of pool around the edges a little bit and make it a little darker. Yeah. So this gave it a more uniform, kind of consistent look.
That is fantastic.
I'm so pleased with how it turned out. It was a lot of trial and error. The first thing I actually tried was resin printing. And that was a dangerous game to play with a piece that large, because the proportions don't quite work right, and it's hard to get things to connect to it.
Yeah, so wow.
I'm very pleased with how it turned out.
Well, the end result is very impressive and very eye-catching, even across the room, these big red panels, super striking. And if you know that there's they never made that color. How'd they come from? Yeah,
all the classic space fans know that it's like, let's see, what is it? Yellow, orange,
neon green,
dark green, neon green, and blue.
Yeah, dark blue.
I think that's it. I think that's it.
Yeah, it's just a very limited color palette for those very big, cool pieces. That's awesome. Yep. And then the whole rest of the scene is interesting, too. You've got these very weird support pieces under there, which,
lattice pillars,
according to the original photo, these aren't the accurate color, but they don't exist in that color, right?
Neither yellow nor white appeared. I've actually got my eye on there's somebody who has a couple yellow ones on Bricklink. If somebody goes and buys them after this, I'm going to be very upset. So maybe if I get in on the our membership tier that's for special projects and things, maybe I could get
we'll work it out. We'll work it out.
Funds to kick towards potentially buying a couple of those.
Yeah, we're gonna get you Bricklink to those before we publish this video.
Yeah, maybe I should just do that and then wait for some money.
We'll help you out with that.
Yeah, but they're like $80 a piece. Because they're
how many does he have? How many does he have?
It's entirely possible. Well, he only has 2 of them.
Okay, well,
but it's entirely possible that those 2 are from this. I mean, you just don't know.
That'd be cool. All right. Well, yeah, that is fantastic work, Daniel. Very exciting to see this completely rebuilt with in the modern age with these pieces.
And everybody loves a monorail, right?
Yeah.
And I had it running at the show. You just change out the 9-volt battery. They last a surprisingly long time.
They do pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
It would run for at least an hour or two.
Thankfully, you only have the 2 cars for this model, so it's probably not weighing it down too badly either.
Not too heavy.
Very cool. Yeah. So this is the excuse me, I keep saying aqua. So
It's easy to do.
this is the above ground above water SEA-TRON guys. This is the human side of things. Let's move to the depths of the ocean here with this. So this is
the mysterious sea people.
This is the second image with the sea people. It actually has an interesting little picture back there, which you've recreated.
It gives me
right here.
It gives me very Sea Monkeys vibes.
Yep.
I don't know if some of the older people or kids who grew up in the 90s remember Sea Monkeys, but they were like these mail away things that you could get. I think they were like little
shrimp or something.
brine shrimp or something. But the whole marketing thing where they were these little people. I don't know. It was weird.
It was fun. I had sea monkeys. I had a little case of sea monkeys. They were
so
great.
Funny. That's funny.
They were fun. But no, so you're right though. This reminds me a lot of that. You know what also this reminds me of? Underwater insectoids. Because you have these creature-looking vehicles. I think stingrays kind of captured the spirit of these later.
Too, yeah.
But insectoids was these big bugs in outer space.
Yep.
This is the underwater, like, manta ray, you got stingray-looking things.
And what's interesting, as I made more of them, they don't really read very well in the photo on a diagonal, but I think each one is based off like a different type of fish.
Yeah.
So like this one with these big wings is like maybe a manta ray
or
a
something. Pufferfish or a sea turtle or something.
Pufferfish or something. This one here I love is very clearly an angler because it's got the white thing on the top and it's got this big
mouth.
Kind of jaw and these big bug eyes on the front. So
yep, they look, and then this one has these like really cool tubes.
I guess it's maybe like a squid because it's got all the tentacles. I don't know.
Or
it
seaweed
kind of looks like
or something.
A nautilus or something maybe is kind of the vibes it gives me.
It's fascinating.
And then there's one other larger one I haven't quite finished. Actually, maybe that one's like the manta ray.
That looks kind of manta ray.
And there's one other one I haven't finished that's like a crab. It's like a little pod with these legs, but it's got these big claws on the front. That's very cool looking.
That is
still
awesome.
working on that one.
Yeah, some very interesting model designs that really come to life once they're outside of a small blurry picture, right? So,
right, yeah. So they're like based on sea creatures, but they're spaceships. Like they have cockpits with controls.
Yeah, and arms and propellers and weapons.
So it's like, did they attach machinery to real sea creatures, or did they just build their ships to look like them? It's kind of fuzzy. You can make of it what you want.
But so, like the SEA-TRON, I finally got it right. SEA-TRON, people above the water, you have a lot of pieces here that really don't exist in those colors. So you want to break down just a handful of those.
A lot more in this one than in that one.
Yeah.
I committed a lot of crimes. I need to go to Lego Church and,
your sins.
My sins.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
There's a strong odor of spray paint in this room.
Yeah, well, it's not too bad. What I'm seeing is some very, very close color matching on some really big
It's pretty good. I'm happy with how the color and the finish turned out. When you get two really close to each other, you can kind of tell the difference.
Yeah.
But a lot of pieces that just don't come in these colors. So these huge panels in green didn't exist. There's this panel that was mostly in, I think, insectoids and explorians.
Yep.
Didn't appear in black. This cockpit did appear in black, but only with a print. So I've been going the Brasso route.
Yeah, another Lego sin.
I messaged Dana Knudsen about it. What's his handle?
Troubles Breaking. And he's I think he just retired from Peach Lug Ambassador duty, so.
I knew he did a lot of that because he was doing the monochrome habitats, and so he was wiping a lot of minifigure prints. So I was like, what's your preferred method for wiping prints? The paints they put on these 90s pieces is really hard to get off, though. I think the quality was a lot better than it is now.
They were well manufactured back then, that's for sure. So.
But a cannon in green and
that's
a
weird color
base
choice.
In black, very odd. The one I had to do the most is just these wedge plates. These like 8x4 and 4x4 wedge plates in green.
Those old sharp wedge plates from the earlier 80s
the ones
era.
With the little corner notch out of them. I think that's
these little fin pieces are interesting too.
The fin pieces that were mostly in, I think, Explorians and UFO. They usually had the holographic stickers on them. And then there were some other pieces that just didn't exist. This one had a big propeller on the back that was like a black 3-bladed propeller.
I see that, yeah.
That's probably honestly, for prototyping stuff like this, they probably got it out of like an RC boat.
Yep.
And just, jammed a Technic pin in there to get it to stick for the purposes of the photo.
Given that the people that were working on this love to sculpt things, and I see some of those sea creatures are probably hand sculpted.
Yeah.
This could have been a hand sculpted
the original
thing too,
clay proofs. There's like this weird alien egg pod thing here that I chose to use the Exoforce pod for it.
It's actually
rather than not Exoforce, Hero Factory.
Hero Factory, that's right.
Yes. Rather than try and make up something else. So.
Exactly. That's really, really close. It's a little lighter green, but it's so close.
I think it's the kind of thing though that people will see it and go, "Oh, that's clever," rather than try and get something more accurate on that.
Yeah, that egg piece. You could sculpt for a long time. And it's not going to quite look right. This is just
it's
a
weird.
quick
It's got
fix.
these horns sticking out of the sides of it and studs on top. So
that is excellent.
Very bizarre stuff, but fun to try and recreate with modern parts.
And then you also have a number of the SEA-TRON figures, the underwater characters here.
I didn't bring any of the regular green ones.
But you've got to match to the poses in the set that they have here.
Right. So what I chose to do it kind of quick and dirty was to use the like swamp monster headpiece.
Exactly, swamp creature guy, yeah.
What was the first thing that came in?
Monster Fighters,
Monster
perhaps?
Fighters,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So I used the Monster Fighters headpiece and then the torso from one of the Space Police aliens. It's either Frenzy or Squidman. Their prints are very similar.
I think they might have the same, actually. I don't know.
They're slightly different. But anyway, they've got these kind of scaly-looking rib things. And if you actually look at the early concept images for Space Police 3, they actually had like the webbed feet that the SEA-TRON guys had. So I think those two figures from Space Police were actually supposed to be like an Easter egg reference to SEA-TRON.
Yep.
However, they obviously still said no to the webbed feet.
Still like, no webbed feet,
so, yeah, unfortunately, never got any better molds or pieces for that. But
too bad.
It's a nice kind of modern interpretation. I may look in the future into partnering with somebody who does custom figs or custom molding to actually try and recreate the actual SEA-TRON minifigures.
It is way more accessible to get things 3D printed or molded now than it was 10 years ago. So,
and I may do a small batch thing, and if I choose to do that, I would probably have to sell some to justify the cost. So
keep an eye out for SEA-TRON.
And you're interested in SEA-TRON minifigures,
I would like to sign up as the first customer here.
Yeah, stay tuned. I'm sure there would be some demand.
That's great. No, that's awesome. But yeah, so having built all these different sea creature models, what was the most difficult part? What was the easiest part of these things to create?
The most difficult part is just working off of one old blurry image from the 90s.
Yep.
There is only one photo, but there are lots of copies of that photo, and some of them have been copies of copies of copies, so some are blurrier than others.
Fuzzier and fuzzier, yep.
So I did still have to kind of scour the internet to find the highest resolution ones that I could, and then I can blow them up, and I can play with things like the contrast and brightness settings, especially on these black vehicles.
Yes.
On a lot of them, in the middle, they just look like black blobs.
It's just a big lump of black right there. So
you kind of have to get a little creative with it and look at the placement of the characteristic and defined elements, and then just kind of fill in the gaps with basic bricks and plates and things that are, in line with the building style of the time. Mostly just plain bricks and some inverted slopes and things on the bottom just to give it a little bit of shape, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, so very careful, sometimes even guesswork with getting all the elements right.
That's the most mentally frustrating part anyway with doing this. In terms of difficulty, trying to find creative solutions like painting and dyeing and wrapping and making custom stickers and things can be difficult too, but they're more just time consuming.
Yeah.
But only working with one image is very difficult.
I can imagine, and especially if you're really trying to replicate something versus creating an original thing, because if it's your own thing, it's like, it doesn't fit, I'll just move it over a little bit,
a stylistic interpretation, whereas I'm really trying to get it as close as I possibly can to the original.
Pointing out that detail, I noticed that, I'm like, hey, so Daniel, there's a little arrow missing, and what's funny is, it's missing on the picture too, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's not there.
Either it got knocked off by the guy taking the photo, or they removed it maybe so you could see like the eye of that one would kind of be hidden by it. So I don't know. I'm waffling between leaving it off and putting it on because it's very clearly supposed to be there.
Yeah,
It's not in the picture.
What's funny is I pointed out, I'm like, oh, so it looks like one of the arrows fell off. And you're like, no, I left it off intentionally because it's the photo. And so that's hilarious. You're like so down to detail. Yeah.
True accuracy.
It's fantastic. Yep. But so such a great assembly of builds and mocks. So one thing I got to ask about it. So those base plates, you didn't have to dye those, right?
Yeah. So in the photo, here they actually look more blue, but when you look at it on a screen, it's like this weird washed out bluish gray. So there were very bright blue ones that came in Aqua Sharks, I think. And then there's this one, which is more of a gray and light blue that came, there was only one of them in I think it was a Hydronauts set. Mm-hmm. It's whichever one used the dark green, big dark green transparent pieces.
Exactly.
And there was only one of those in that. So I decided rather than go with the blue one, which is more common, I would go for this one so it kind of looks a little more unusual and subtle. I think the bright blue would have contrasted maybe a little too much.
Yeah. This actually really gives me the vibe that this is special and unique because you really don't see the gray version of that base plate that often. The blue one,
we didn't have any here at the store. I had to buy those on Bricklaying.
The blue one we actually have in the store. We've seen them. They're a little more in circulation. This is pretty special. So
yeah, the real one I think is kind of like halfway in between the two. It maybe has a little bit more of a greenish tint to it, kind of like a algae cover.
It looks kind of teal color almost from the picture.
Almost, yeah.
And then we briefly mentioned the sign behind it earlier, the Sea People sign, and that looks like something that was kind of whipped up as a promotion to try and for the presentation. Maybe it's like Sea People. Right. This is it. Yeah. So
I like to think of. They've got these in a nice photo backdrop or something, and it was probably just for these photo shoots for pitch meetings. Yeah. But the way that I set this up at convention, I have a whole big blue backdrop with the logo. We'll probably drop some pictures in here with the SEA-TRON logo, which we should also talk about in a minute, and the Lego system logo, which always gets people excited. Because I want it to look like something you might see at like a toy fair or a convention or something, where they would do this promotional stuff. Lego would always go to these toy conventions to say, hey, here's our upcoming line of products you can look forward to. So that's kind of the way I wanted to make it look. That's
awesome. Yeah. And you recreated that sign and that font very carefully.
Well, I, as well as you, have a background in graphic design, so, I like just doing that stuff. And that was so easy. I did this in like 5 minutes. Yep. Because this and the SEA-TRON logo, they made these in the 90s, so they're like the most basic of fonts. Exactly. Because they're the only fonts that were around back then. The SEA-TRON logo is like Arial, and then this one... I can't remember the name of it, but it's a common one. It was in it's like in the default fonts. That's great. It's so easy.
That's awesome. Yeah, so talk to us about the SEA-TRON logo that we have on your background and your nice T-shirt here. I
had to get it printed on a shirt.
So the original logo is accessible in a pixelated, blurry form, right?
It's on, I think it's on the Brickopedia article and probably a handful of other places. It pops up every now and then, but it's the over water and the underwater kind of juxtaposition there with those two different colored canopies. Yeah. But yes, the original is very jagged on the edges because it's been rasterized too many times, I guess. I don't know. Exactly. So I took the initiative. I hopped in Adobe Illustrator. It's basic polygons. I just recreated the whole thing.
But it looks great.
The hardest part was getting all the subtle like gradients and things.
Yeah, the kind of gem look to it.
Octagonal canopy here. But I do now have a crispy, clean copy of the SEA-TRON logo. So if anybody needs that, hit me up. I'll be happy to send the file your way.
There you go. Is this something you would want to put on the Atlanta Brick Co. t-shirt design roster at some point, or maybe?
If there's enough interest, we could. I figured I was just going to print a one-off. But if there's enough interest, we could probably do it by the order.
Maybe it could be something to benefit Daniel in his search for those yellow supports too, something like that. I don't know. We'll work something out. Anyway, because that was on your own time, right? Yeah. So,
Well, I think the other issue is we don't keep these dark blue shirts in stock. We need to order some of those. But if you're interested in one, you can try writing to us. We could maybe do a
send us an email, info@atlbrick.com. Let us know.
I don't think it's one that if it was on our racks in the stores would sell very well.
No one would know what it is, unfortunately. Like, even if we did like Ice Planet or Aspirius or something like that, it still wouldn't really be that known. This is the unknown of the unknown.
The castle in the space is what gets people going.
Exactly, that's for sure. But Well, very cool. Daniel, is there any other elements that we want to discuss before we round up here? I think we've got a pretty good understanding
think so.
of
That's
it.
probably a pretty good coverage of SEA-TRON, probably about as well as anybody else could have done.
I think we've dumped more SEA-TRON knowledge out there in the internet than has been
You're
for a long time.
You're going to be well educated now, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much for bringing these out to share with everyone, Daniel. These are awesome, and I'm really looking forward to them being displayed at Atlanta BrickCon. It's actually going to be, as of this airing right now, it's on display at the convention now.
That's correct.
That's what's happening.
You can come to the Gas South Convention Center to Atlanta BrickCon and see it in person.
Sounds good. If you're in the Atlanta area, stop by after watching this video.
And come find me. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
You can get a selfie.
Don't feel like you've learned everything there is to know about SEA-TRON already.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, Daniel. And thank you guys for watching this and enjoying this LEGO content. If you like this kind of stuff, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We got a bunch more coming up.
Hit the like button, please.
Yeah,
this is an obscure one.
Yeah, Daniel needs the likes.
This one won't have a lot of mass appeal.
Yeah, we're not expecting this video to blow up. At the same time, we love this stuff.
This is more a service to the dedicated fans.
This is for us, okay? And you guys can enjoy it too, and hopefully you do. But thanks for tuning in with us. We sure appreciate it. Bye-bye, guys.
See ya.